Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we discuss day-to-day problems people face in their lives. Let's start with the video.
I am a 26-year-old guy living on my own in a small apartment. I live a quiet life and have a stable job in a nice, empty, cold home. The reason I live in a cold apartment by myself, deprived of familial worth for the past few months, is that I've been getting treated like a stranger by my family and the people I consider closest to me because of something that happened and a decision I made for the sake of doing the right thing. The story starts 3 years ago when my brother and our first cousin began what they call a true love story. They started hanging out in private and going on dates, and he was gushing to me about his feelings and attraction towards our cousin like it was the most normal thing to do in the world. I never failed, not once, to show my opposition and dislike of their relationship, especially when I noticed that things were starting to get serious and their emotions were getting stronger by the day. Not even a few months passed and they decided they wanted to take the next step and get married. Everything happened awfully quickly. The entire family seemed to be blindsided by how weird it was or how damaging it could be in the future. Nobody sat them down to talk to them about what they could be doing. And I believe that's possible because everyone assumed as I did. Everyone knew they were adults responsible for their own actions, and back then, everyone seemed to silently agree upon it. It's not like it's common in our community to marry first family members or anything. Still, for some reason, it appeared that I was the only one that saw the situation to be as weird as I did, and certainly the one that dared to mention it to my brother and express my opposition to it. My thoughts were ignored, obviously, and the wedding took place soon after and was beautiful nevertheless. Everyone had a blast. By the end of that day, my brother was married to his cousin. I still found it just as weird as I did when I first found out about the relationship, but I still tried to be happy for my brother and show gratitude towards the wedding. I thought to myself that it was none of my business and that as long as nobody was being harmed, I had no reason to try and intervene in doing anything. Surely they both knew the dangers their marriage could have on their future children's health and would inevitably take the precautions necessary to make sure nothing terrible goes wrong. With that trust in mind, I continued to congratulate them and gift and treat them like any other ordinary couple. I even grew to like the version of my brother that was in love with family life whenever we would meet during family reunions, which often took place many times throughout the year. A couple of years passed like that, and I received the news that my cousin was pregnant with my brother's baby. Red flags began displaying themselves in my mind once again. Still, I assumed they had surely taken the steps necessary to make sure that their kids weren't in any sort of danger. They had gotten the fetus chromosomes checked, and my cousin had gotten the medical treatment necessary to make sure that if there were genetic malfunctions, that the baby is terminated before it's promised a long, medically miserable lifetime. But I was wrong. My concerns began getting confirmed when I heard that my cousin was getting rushed to the hospital every so often because the baby was getting sick. Soon after, I heard that the baby was going to be born with many organ malfunctions that he or she would have to deal with for the rest of their life, getting thrown around hospitals and being extremely medically expensive for the relatively middle-class family that was composed of my brother, his cousin, and the sick newborn. My cousin gave birth to a beautiful baby girl that I fell in love with the moment my eyes landed on. I knew that whatever her health conditions would be, she would be one loved girl, and I was to make sure of that for as long as I lived. That day, my brother approached me and informed me that he and my cousin talked about making me godfather to that child, and that he was officially offering me the honor of doing so. I was abruptly taken aback by his offer, and I expressed that there would be no way I could take care of a little girl if it actually came to it and something happened to her parents. I told him that I wasn't prepared to care for another soul in any way, not physically, mentally, nor emotionally, especially not one with needs that exceed any other normal child. He took it to heart and accused me of not loving the little girl. He brought up things of the past and deduced that I was taking vengeance for when he had refused to listen to me when I told him to end the relationship in the first place, and even accused me of being jealous and envious of him since childhood. He went on and on ignoring the reasoning I put into rejecting his offer and made sure to hurt and damage my feelings without any regard to the fact that I truly and deeply loved my niece regardless of her health conditions and that it had nothing to do with love or the absence of strong, adoring sentiments. The story was twisted and morphed into something that displayed me as an absolutely crappy person. My family got to hear it from his side only, and ever since then, I've been completely shut out of the family. I don't get invited to family gatherings anymore. When I go back home on holidays or on the rare occasion that I've been invited to anything at all, I get to put aside as if I'm there as a stranger to simply observe. At the same time, everyone enjoyed the familial atmosphere and festivities, not once caring about what it makes me feel like to be excluded from my family, and not even bothering to bring up the subject again and offering to hear it from my side. Everyone just made the judgment that I was indeed a bad person, and then they made sure to treat me that way until I eventually stopped showing up to gatherings and learned how to kill that part of me that constantly yearned for family air. Not the a-hole. I think the decision to not take in a responsibility that is greater than what you can do is really brave. And I think your family is made up of terrible people because they should be able to see it themselves. I bet if they had been offered that, they would have rejected the offer too. But instead of it being because of inability, it would have been because they love the child less than you do. It's always the worst people that feel entitled to judge and partake in discrimination that has nothing to do with them. Not the a-hole. Your brother is honestly so childish. He should have been able to see that you love him and care about him, because if you were jealous and envious since childhood days like he said, you would have taken the opportunity to side against him as a person after the marriage, since he thinks that's what you're judging him for. Props to you for having the mind and the courage to put down the responsibility that you can take, and I honestly can say that I would have done the same if I was in your situation. You're the a-hole. I'm a godfather to my best friend's kid who has Down syndrome, and his wife died a couple of years ago, which also doesn't necessarily mean that I'm taking legal guardianship over the kid. But I've been taking in the role of the mom and splitting parenthood with my friend because the love I have for that child is more than the hours or the money I've put into making sure he's happy and healthy to the extent of my ability. I also think you feel entitled to your opinion because you've been against the marriage since day one, and since the kid's sickness is a result of the parents being blinded by emotions. But I also think your brother knows that too and feels guilty, and that's possibly the reason why he's acting the way he is. I disagree. The situation that you're in and original poster are very, very different. We don't really know the severity of the sickness and to what extent it's possible to care for her medically, and he's clearly not in a financial or materialistic state that allows him to care for her sufficiently. It's not about loving or not loving the kid. It's about giving her the best quality of life she can get considering the circumstances. I do agree with what you said about feeling entitled and his brother's guilt, but it's still not the rest of the family's business to treat him like he committed a crime by practicing his liberty to make decisions to not take on such grand responsibilities.
Next story. I, female 36, lost my 3-year-old son from a chronic condition that he was born with. I struggled a lot with his illness and received a lot of support from my family when my ex-husband was too busy with work to care for his son. When my brother and his wife found out they were expecting, they suffered from a miscarriage after miscarriage. And because of their financial situation, I decided to lend them my son's nursery to use for their baby under the condition that they give it back when they no longer need it. It's an expensive nursery, and the process of shipping, I live in another country, took me time and money, and of course, not to mention its sentimental value. They were so grateful for my help and appreciated it a lot, but my sister-in-law unfortunately lost her baby at 5 months in the pregnancy, and I heard from my mother since my brother and sister-in-law went low contact with everyone to be able to grieve. I waited a few months before asking for the nursery back, since they no longer needed it. I called and asked my brother to send it despite how cruel I sounded, but I just had to get it back. But I was shocked after my brother said they sold it, all of it, every single piece. I asked why, and he said his wife was depressed and he needed the money to take her on vacation a month ago. I lost my temper and started screaming at him on the phone, reminding him that this belonged to my son and only for them to borrow, not sell. He apologized and asked me to be understanding of his wife's position as a grieving mother myself. I said no, they should have considered how selling my son's nursery would affect me as a grieving mother, and he replied that he didn't think I was being fair to scream at him for wanting to help his wife through these hard times. I told him that's not my problem and that I will be suing them both over the nursery and for every penny he made out of selling it. He called me nuts and hung up and then called my parents. They tried to get involved after I threatened to sue and called me callous and unhinged for threatening my brother and sister-in-law with court and told me to let it go. I don't need the nursery and it's not worth causing permanent damage in my relationship with my brother over few pieces of furniture. My ex-husband blamed me, saying that it was my fault for giving the nursery to my brother, but I just wanted to help out. He keeps pushing for the idea to sue, but my parents are telling me not to. Am I the a-hole for wanting to sue them for the nursery that cost us nearly over $4,000? Just to explain something, my ex-husband gets a say because he paid for the nursery as well, and he keeps pushing for me to sue and told me he'll do it if I choose to back down. He keeps saying it's my fault for letting my brother have the nursery in the first place, and he's very upset with me about it. Not the a-hole. It was so unbelievably cruel and selfish for them to sell mementos of your son for a vacation. You lending them the nursery for free represents how highly you regarded them and how you very kindly hoped that they would honor your son's memory by bringing up their own child with his nursery. And they in turn said, your love and your deceased son means nothing to us. It is only worth as much as we can get by breaking the set down and selling it. Sue their pants off. Go with your parents' pressure and pretend to be ready to move on if they apologize for selling the items they were supposed to return you out of emotional desperation if you want to. Anything to get them to admit in writing text that it was not a loan, not a gift. Then absolutely rinse them in court. This, not the a-hole, sue them for every penny and then the legal fees. For a vacation. I cannot believe this. We all have awful traumatic events. What we don't all do is sell sentimental items that weren't ours that we promised to return because we needed a vacation. I'm so angry and disgusted with both of them on your behalf. Edited to add, I'm trying to imagine the effing discussion that took place in level of pure audacity, selfishness, and dismissiveness. And after original poster did these guys a huge favor too. Sweetie, I need to get away. I'm so depressed, but we have no money. Oh, but we have her nursery. But didn't original poster ask us to return it? And it's quite expensive. She probably forgot about this. Also, I need this. She might be mad, but I'm sure she'll let it go. Let's sell it. Go on vacation and worry about it later. Consequences happen. Cue shocked Pikachu face. I need to get this off the thread. My blood is boiling. The words I'd like to use to describe those two are words that would get me banned. Get a lawyer and get the ball rolling. Now, this needs consequences. I'm going against the grain here and saying you're the a-hole. Mostly because I don't believe you when you said you made it clear you wanted all this stuff back. Nobody does that with baby gear, and you certainly don't do it with things that have great sentimental value. It just stretches credulity to think you went through all of the trouble of packing it up and mailing it internationally, risking all the possible ways it could have been damaged or lost there, knowing that you were going to demand they turn around and ship it all back in a few years. I think you intended for them to have it, figuring it would be in the family, but then lost your mind a bit when you found out it was gone. Then you took it out on a family that had just suffered a tragedy. I'm truly sorry for your loss, but I honestly think you were being unreasonable. I definitely think this is exactly what happened. She just wants sympathy and to make everything about her. I honestly doubt her and the ex will ever win this in court. They're going to see how stupid this sounds, and honestly, I hope the brother and his wife have proof she gave it to them so they cannot have to pay her back. Unpopular opinion, but everyone sucks here. More accurately, everyone is hurting here, and that is leading to impaired judgment. They should have never sold something so precious to you, but now that what's done is done, they should at the very least offer you the money they made on it. For your part, please consider the possibility that your intentions in loaning the nursery were unclear and they were not in their right minds at the time the decision was made. You have every right to be upset with them, but I think your reaction was where you crossed a line into a-hole territory. There are other ways to communicate feelings. I'm very sorry for what you're enduring. There are no words for the pain of losing a child. I would caution you, however, that despite being wronged and in some ways re-traumatized by your in-laws, losing a relationship with them will only cause you further pain, and I do not think suing them will promote healing on any side. Best of luck. Next story. My wife, who I'll refer to as W, and I have been together for a little bit more than a decade. When we first met, neither of us was in our home country. We'll call this country FC. I was in the military and my now wife was a foreign worker. The work that my wife was doing is a whole other story involving my mother-in-law, but we'll leave that for another day. During our time in FC, my mother-in-law had a habit of making up medical emergencies in order to get W to send money home. The most extreme example of this is telling W that her father had died and they needed money for funeral expenses. Several months later, after we had gone home, her father came into the house having fully recovered from his death. Fast forward about a decade. W's father really did pass away, and mother-in-law has health problems from long-term diabetes. W has made efforts to repair the relationship and has even helped mother-in-law pay for her insulin. I recently got a job which came with a significant pay raise. W told her sister about this career advancement. A week later, W gets a call that mother-in-law had a mini stroke and was in the hospital. W was very distraught and was trying to think of any way to help. We live in a different country than mother-in-law on the other side of the world, so typical non-monetary ways of helping are not great options. So W was considering sending money to pay for mother-in-law's hospital stay. We make good money and it wouldn't really be an issue to help out. That is the setup. Now the am I the a-hole part. While W was in near panic, I reminded her of mother-in-law's history of faking medical issues for financial support. I also pointed out that it was suspicious timing that this would occur 1 week after they learned we had gotten a significant pay increase. I believed that the past abuse meant that W was at least owed proof. This triggered W and sent her into a spiral of depression, which so far has resulted in her cutting off contact. I know that mother-in-law did some horrible things in the past, but W has really been trying to rebuild the relationship and to feel like she had an actual mother. I feel like I've instigated something that might set back the healing process. So am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole in my opinion. This woman has been lying about her and other people's health for so long. That must be so intensely traumatizing for your wife. This is a really difficult situation. She loves her mother. The fact you're so very concerned with helping your wife heal and build a relationship with her mother-in-law shows that no, you're not the a-hole. You're just looking out for someone you love so she isn't lied to and abused further. Not the a-hole. Can she call the hospital directly, ask to talk to the doctors as the patient's daughter to find out her condition, long-term prognosis, etc.? That will determine true diagnosis and determine how much she does or doesn't need to help her out. And attending therapy with your wife might be good and supportive to help her get through these betrayals.